Hey guys, Trevor Hold here. Welcome to another episode of the Who Are We podcast. Today I've got a special guest with me, Johnny McCry. How you going, Johnny?
Good, man. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Just before we get started, just a little disclosure that we're recording this session. We're going to upload it to the podcast channel on YouTube and provide some links on LinkedIn or whatever for promotional. The theory being that if we can talk about who we are or get a bit of an understanding of different people in the community, that might help other people to question and explore their own identity. So hopefully create better outcomes all around.
Yep.
So I'll get straight into it. Who is Johnny and what does he stand for?
Cool. What a good question. I am, I'm currently COO of Precision Screen. Who am I and what do I stand for? Look, for a long, long time, Trevor, I've been interested in teams and what motivates people and what makes them tick. Right down to even recently, I've just completed some research with University of Queensland, trying to understand the motivations of young adult athletes. But look, I've been able to grab some of those ideas, from that research and from the sports-based examples that I've got, and even apply them into our workshop as well. But yeah, who am I? What makes me tick? As I say, I have a fascination in regards to what motivates people, why people make certain decisions, why they make certain choices over other choices, or what. Yeah, just what makes them tick essentially. That I find it super interesting, super fascinating, and again, even with the evolution of time, evolution of technology, evolution of new practices and whatever, it really still comes down to what motivates people and the choices they make and how it affects both themselves and others as well. So
Yeah, so I'm hearing that just trying to explore incentives and motivations between decisions that other people make, whether they're good or bad decisions, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them, it doesn't really matter. You just want to try and get down to the nuts and bolts of the process of that decision.
yeah, pretty much. It's more just as you said, people will make decisions, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, or whatever, and that impacts both themselves and others. And it's trying to just better understand. It's us as leaders, or us as whether it be coaches, teachers, managers, whatever it might be. It's just we live in a fast-paced, busy world. You know what I mean? We have high expectations. Again, whether it's as coaches, teachers, managers, whatever it might be. So taking that time to understand the people in front of you, why they're making these decisions, why they choose, make certain choices over others, as an example, and what motivates them, or even just their level of understanding. They might make a decision which is just, it sort of conflicts what you were thinking of, but again, it might be just that level of understanding. So taking that extra minute of time, asking an extra couple of questions as leaders, managers, whatever it might be, to better understand the person that's standing in front of you, will just give you that context for why they make these choices as well. So yeah, for what you're saying, it's not really the outcomes. The outcomes is, it's interesting, and as I say, my research has been within sort of age grade high performance sport, and I have that interest in that high performance element, to call it that. But again, it's more to understand, even at that, to call it elite level, and again, that could be in everything, that could be in manufacturing, management, leadership, whatever it might be. Again, it's just understanding why they made certain choices over other choices as well. And just having that deeper understanding for why people, act the way they do.
So I heard you say that you like to explore their understanding a little bit more. Do you think by having and I think you mentioned spending that couple of minutes to get to the bottom of it and explore different perspectives, because obviously understanding is a two-way street, isn't it? And
Yep.
As leaders or as managers or whatever, coaches or whatever, our perspectives might vary, and our understanding of certain circumstances, despite being regarded as a subject of matter that you do know, it's still a perspective thing, isn't it? And how people fit into these environments. So taking that extra couple of minutes to understand and have that conversation, do you feel creates positive outcomes all around?
By my experience, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I guess it's I mean, it's pretty insightful from yourself to see that and ask that as well. And we're losing that. I mean, we are losing that. From an industrial point, from even from a teaching point. I mean, right the way through. We're in such a hurry. I mean, because of the technological advancements, it seems I mean, in our almost digital world now, we're in such a hurry. Everything's so immediate that we don't take that time as teachers or leaders, I mean, to ask those questions and understand. Like, context is important, I mean, just understanding even the mindset that people are in on a daily basis as well. If we as a manager or leader, in a business context, I mean, can understand the person who's standing in front of you, what's going on at home, I mean, what sort of what's taking up their brain space or emotional load at the moment, then we can understand that if they're only, I mean, offering 80-90% of, I mean, what's their usual workload, that's, I mean, that can be, that's at this time, I mean, based on, I mean, the emotional load or other distractions they might have going on. So yeah, you're right. I find it's extremely important and pretty critical for us as, leaders or managers, particularly as in the current makeup. We talk of the different generations that are working within the workplace at the moment. And a 25-year-old I mean, should be managed very differently, a 45-year-old as well. And that does take some agility, I mean, as a leader, I mean, to act and operate in that way. But again, for me, it starts off with that conversation. It starts off with the questions of, how are you, what's going on, whatever. So yeah.
It sounds like a high level or a high degree of curiosity that you tend to have with everything. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, like that's a really good pickup, and I actually quite appreciate that as well. You know what I mean? Yeah, that level of curiosity. And again, it's a really good point that you bring up. I mean, because that level of curiosity again is somewhat lost. I mean, we're focusing on outputs, we're focusing on, I mean, whether it be from a sporting context. I mean, there's algorithms and measurements that they see from a sporting context, whenever they step on the field. But again, it's the same whether it be in a factory floor or an office-based environment. It's wholly about outputs. But and again, as a leader, as a manager, if you had that, even just a slight, I mean, a slight increase in curiosity, I mean, to get to know, I mean, your employees, ask 2 more questions, I mean, on a daily basis as well, to get to know them or what's going on with them, then you can better understand, I mean, more elements around that performance, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's a great, I mean, I appreciate you, flagging that curiosity. I am extremely curious for why people do certain things that they do, more so than the output, if that makes sense. The output's just a circumstance, and that's as a result of, but the level of investment, the level of commitment that they show comes from that motivation within, and us as leaders or I mean, managers, whatever it might be, to have that curiosity and ask those questions will ultimately, hopefully, we'll get, I mean, a greater degree of buy-in or input from them. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know a bit about who you are, like busy wise. You're a very busy man in general, and generally you're juggling a few hats. You sort of said that you're CEO of a company there in Brisbane, and obviously that's got a big impact on your day-to-day sort of life. Do you find that sometimes you got to actually pause and tell yourself to be more curious, or and try to get out of that rut? Because you say it is very difficult in this fast-paced world that we live in to find that time. Is it something that you have to consciously do on a day-to-day basis, or?
Yeah, like, and and sadly it can be on almost a week-to-week basis as well. And you're right, because as a manager, you know what I mean, there's a few pots on the boil, to call it that, as well. So sometimes you can just get into a headspace, and I catch myself on it. I mean, looking at the outputs, looking at times, and I mean, what employees are doing as an example, or I mean, cash flow issues and so on and so forth as well. So it's time, and look, I have got better, to have that, I mean, people that you can talk to as well. Like, it's really important again, and that's another reason why I like these ideas or frameworks for leaders to talk to, I mean, whether it be their students, their players in a sporting atmosphere, or I mean, their team members, whether it be in a professional atmosphere as well. To have those conversations actually allows that you know, I mean, sometimes, and I joke with my wife, you know, sometimes if you say it out loud, it actually isn't, you know, I mean, that mountain, it is a bit of a molehill as well. You know, actually, if you verbalize it and say it out loud, but it's actually being willing to talk about it and decompress to some degree, which us as males, you know what I mean, in particular, it's much easier to grab that and shove it down and not talk about it as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, like it's hard to pause, you know, I mean, that self curiosity, I guess, to come back to the question, it's really, really hard, you know what I mean, to
yeah,
have that discipline on yourself to go, hold on, how am I feeling? You know, almost checking in with yourself and then checking in with someone else to you know, I mean, to let that emotion out almost is
yeah,
really, really hard, particularly the industry that we're in. But even, as I say, really hard and really uncommon. Although times have changed, but if you go back 5, 10 years ago, you know, I mean, blokes like us, we wouldn't chat about, you know, I mean, how things are hard or what's going on or how we're feeling as well. We just sort of get on with it, you know what I mean?
yeah,
But that's a really good point that you bring, that, yeah, having that almost self-compassion to pause and go, all right, yeah, hold on, you know, I mean, what am I thinking? Why am I feeling, you know, this way or whatever? Is a good lesson or a good, you know, I mean, trick for yourself, because then you can show that compassion for others as well. So yeah.
and looking in the mirror, and it's something that I've struggled with my whole life too, in projects, is looking in the mirror and trying to identify what's you can improve or what's wrong with your own emotions and your own positions, and having that courage. And I think you mentioned too, like finding that person that you can talk to about this, and it's merely sometimes just venting or getting some frustrations out of you, or just general conversations, just to try and free up some of that built up tension that you have, or the weight of the world on your shoulders. So it sounds like that's something that you've practiced, and like you said, it is a part of self-care required to show the curiosity that you endeavored to show.
Yeah, and courage is a great word for it as well, because yeah, you know, I mean, go back, and it wasn't even that long ago, say 3, 4 years ago, I wasn't courageous when it came to
Mm.
those type of issues, to call it that, you know what I mean, with
Yeah,
myself, you know what I mean, it was easier just to, you know what I mean, lean into the fast-paced life and sort of block everything out and whatever. So and you know, I mean, you lose relationships along the way when you do that as well. That's probably what isn't talked about. You know, I mean, getting on that, you know, I mean, that fast-paced lifestyle and just leaning into work and focusing on the output, you lose connection. You lose yeah, that curiosity with yourself and with others as well. And you in turn then you isolate yourself, and it can, you know, it can become lonelier and lonelier and harder to you know, to deal with as well.
yeah,
So having that self curiosity, like that you're talking about addressing, yeah, that's a good start, because then you can show that curiosity, that compassion, that understanding for others as well, which is so important, and something that's massively overlooked in, as I say, this fast-paced digital world that we're living in at the moment. So yeah.
yeah. It's been great, and it's been good to get your insights on these, and thanks very much for joining us, Johnny. I really appreciate um, you know, these conversations, and picking up that curiosity, you know, both self curiosity on yourself, and hopefully that self-care with yourself, and projecting it forward into others. To me, sounds like a very good philosophy to live by, and I appreciate you for spending the time and talking to us about it today.
No worries, no worries. Thanks for the invite, and yeah, I mean, those are some really good, insightful questions as well. So
Thanks very much, Johnny. Have a good one. Eh?
cool. Cheers, man.